One thing I've learned is that nothing will destroy your creative future more than this. While you watch me draw this, learn why you need to make a decision between either being a creator or a consumer of media, but also why you're probably not being as much of a creator as you think that you are. Only one's gonna help you do what you want to do. Now, at the start of your journey, right, what actually made you want to be an artist? What inspired you to want to actually walk down this path? Let me just ask, what were some of your biggest inspirations? I remember for me, it used to be when I was a little kid and I would watch Ninja Turtles, and then I would start to play video games. And then this kind of ties itself into the topic of this video today. All of that is totally necessary, and everything that's coming in around you is awesome, and it can definitely help to bring you and expose you to things that you did not previously have any exposure or awareness of. However, though, I think that we need to refocus this. One thing I want you to consider is, what is your purpose in this life? Why were you put here? And what do you want to do with it? Because one of the things I want to kind of point out to you, if you've never really thought about this, but media is really a double-edged sword, and it cuts both ways. Because on one hand, you need to do it, you need to consume it, and you need to be able to be aware of what actually inspired you and those elements from your childhood. And then you can put that into your art, but then also at the same time, nothing will annihilate your creativity like we're gonna talk about in this video today. But listen, I'm not demonizing any of these habits, but instead what I wanna do throughout this is I wanna give you a very clear picture of how you can walk the line of being a creator, but also having a good, healthy control of what is going to influence you and versus what is gonna give you control and direction over your future. Are you going to be in this life either a creator of media or a consumer of media? And if you do wanna be a creator, how these tips today are gonna allow you to carve your name into the fabric of the universe. And this is how. Now, here's a curious observation that I have as a recovering media hog. For me personally, I can and have played copious amounts of video games. I love it. And definitely, no, I'm not demonizing that. It's wicked fun. And it's something that I do enjoy. And I do want to give you a healthier version throughout this video of how to do that and step into your role. But every single time that I found myself really sitting down and tending to all of the tasks associated with that game, or swap that out. It can be a show, it can be a movie, it can be a series, it can be TikTok, it can be any type of social media engagement, okay? But any form of media that you are consuming, and what you're gonna find is that somebody who is in the role of a media consumer is going to put a lot of emphasis into helping somebody else achieve their dreams. Because when you think about, and when you actually take a look at what actually took a video game to actually take off and get into your household, into your hands, right? Is that it took a mountain of effort. It took a lot of mountains of efforts, literally an entire mountain range of efforts from a ton of different artists, a ton of different creators. And then that kind of brings me into this topic. Have you ever thought that your overindulgence into any type of media, into being a consumer, is actually a way for you to sacrifice your dream to help others achieve theirs? In you doing that, in you taking an extreme amount of time off of what you actually want to do, out of the project that you were meant to create on this earth, that you have been thinking about, you've been ruminating up in here for a long time, right? That is actually all of your dreams going down the toilet because you're celebrating their dream and not your own. And what I also find that this ties into is that you're living a life of servitude to somebody else's efforts, to somebody else's dreams, rather than your own. So if you want to step into the role of a creator more on this end, let me just ask you this. How much time are you putting into yours? What efforts are you currently taking? What is your labor currently like to achieve your goal of creating your game or your comic, or your goal of working for that company, or your goal of doing this or creating that or selling those? If you are on the role of being a creator, friend, one of the things that I want you to embrace instead is you need to focus on being your best version for yourself in your dreams. Otherwise, it becomes really easy for you to just give up everything that you're currently doing and that you actually want to do. And then that's going to bring up and arise some other concerns that I'm going to talk to you about today, which is going to allow you to rather seamlessly just relinquish everything that you used to hold dear. Do you really want that? Now, for those of you that tune into me because you really enjoy my honest and no fluff approach to things, this one's not going to disappoint you. And in case you didn't want a big, awesome piece of honesty pie, I'm going to serve it to you hot and ready with some whipped cream, and here we go. So if you're not familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, He is also a mega creator here on any platform that you've ever watched or ever consumed. He is a big person on there. And one of the things that he says that really resonated with me, and I actually had a visceral reaction to this the first time I heard it, but the more I accepted it, the better that it kind of stuck with me. So I want to propose it to you like this. One of the things he says is that the next time that you say that you don't have time for something, just actually tell yourself, I just don't care. It just doesn't matter that much. And so what I want to relate this to is the difference between a creator and consumer, which is that if you're somebody who's on the consumer end of media or somebody that's leaning more heavily on the split towards that, one of the things that you're going to say to yourself is, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to create that. I don't have time to learn that. I don't have time to be an artist. I don't have time to do it as much as I want. Versus if you are a creator, you are going to find the time. So the next time that you say to yourself, or you come to the version or the excuse that I don't have time for this, instead, friend, what I want to propose to you is, no, I'm not telling you to quit your job or to ignore your kids or your spouse or your family or anything like that. No, friend. What I'm going to just propose to you instead is, are you really maximizing the pockets of time? Because the difference between a creator or consumer on this note is that somebody who is a creator is going to seek out those opportunities. They're going to make those opportunities. Whereas somebody who's more on the consumer end is going to be really pulverized by what you call time and your lack of time that you perceive it as. And instead, they're going to just make the concession and say, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to make that. And what you're really doing there, I just want to point it out for you, is that you're settling into mediocrity, okay? And I say that lovingly, friend, so that you can not feel dismayed by that or not feel put down by it, but I just want to put that out to you because it's way too easy to settle into there and just make up the excuse for it. And let me just ask, have you really thought about how much you care and how much that could transform your life? And I want you to look at this at two different ends. If you're somebody who is really motivated just by your own thoughts, goals, and ambitions, then have you ever thought about how much better your life will be, how much richer your life will be, how much better you're gonna be in a better circle of better people by stepping into the role of being a creator? And then if you're also on the other spectrum, if you're somebody who's okay with letting yourself down, but you're not okay with letting other people down, let me just let you into this real hard reality, is that you're failing everybody around you by not stepping into the creator role that you want to be and that you wish that you were doing a little bit more of. So just to show you as an example here, when I first started my career in art education, in the first 2 years, I found that I was making artwork for everybody else. And I was making artwork for my students and for my job, my career, way too much. And then I started to notice I started to get really, really grouchy and really, really grumpy. And I know I'm not the only creator out here. And if you're like this, please tell me about it, is that when you're not in that creation role enough and when that scale starts to tip more towards consumption, you tend to notice that you are showing up as a lesser version of yourself. Because of the fact that you've chosen to take the role of being a consumer over a creator, you're showing up as a worse brother, sister, you're showing up as a worse son or daughter, you're showing up as a worse sibling, you're showing up as a worse spouse to your partner, and you're showing up as a worse parent to your children. And then just to speak to the parents out here, I just want to really drop this bomb on you, which is that in you giving up your role of a creator, what you're doing too is you're teaching your kids to be okay with failing and also teaching them to be mediocre. Let me just ask you, how much better would it be if you were able to teach your kids how important it is to chase and achieve your dreams? Because that's one of the things that I think about with my boys is I don't want them to look at me as another slug on the couch watching TV, like we'll talk about in a minute here, and why that is so prevalent in all cultures now, and why that is not something that I want my kids to be inundated with, and I'm gonna bet you don't either. And so what I wanna challenge you with, friend, is how are you stepping into the truest version of yourself? And are you able to defy the norms and expectations we're gonna talk about today in order to step into the role of being weird? Because if not, the only thing that's gonna feel weird is the life that you somehow grew into in the next 20 years that's nothing like the one that you dreamed of. You ever thought about that? Now, as I've said from the get-go here, I don't want you to just go ahead and demonize any form of media. I want you to have fun. I want you to watch the things that you want to watch. I want you to play the games that you want to play too. But we have to draw a line at what is a healthy version of this and what is a completely engrossed, indulgent version of this that's really harming your creativity and your future roles in it. And so what I generally find is that being a healthy creative is just like any general nutrition plan, in that it's not about you completely abandoning it. So in the same way that, like, if you cut out everything that's unhealthy and delicious from your diet, you're gonna then crave it more and more and more and more and more, and then it's gonna have an adverse effect. And then what that produces is an unsustainable impact on you. And so what I wanna propose to you is this model that I've called the 2/3 split, which is that 2/3 of your time should be more devoted to creative efforts than to consumption efforts. So let me just go ahead and put this into a very manageable model for you here. Let's say that you are able to only create artwork for 10 hours a week, okay? That's a very manageable amount. You can do that, anybody can. And I'm talking to you, by the way, on that note, as somebody who has a full-time job, who has an art business, somebody who is also in a doctorate program, who's also a husband, and who's also a father, because I put in 20 into everything that I do creatively. And so if you're only able to do 10 hours a week, then you should definitely think about splitting it into 3 hours of consumption time and about 6 to 7 of them on the actual creative effort side. Because if you do this, then what you're doing is you're giving more power to one versus another. And this also kind of reminds me of this Native American folklore about how there are two wolves battling inside of us. One of them representing all the good, the harmony, and the peace in the world. The other one representing all the chaos and the evil in the world. Whichever one that you feed is the one that wins. And so if you put that into this perspective, whichever one that you want to give more time, more energy to, is the one that's going to conquer you and conquer your life and take it over. And I also best want to represent this. This is very much just like wealth, okay? And wealth is not a number. Wealth is a percentage. Like, just for example, like if you can bring in $5,000 and live on $2,500, you're gonna feel like you have a lot of comfort. And I just wanna propose this model for you of this 2/3 split, whatever it is, if it's 5 hours, if it's 10 hours, if it's 20 hours, if it's more than that a week, just think about how do you split that into 2/3 of your time solely being dedicated towards your creative craft. And now you might be somebody right now who's heavily opposing this, and you're heavily opposing yourself limiting it because you somehow think that it's going to deny your opportunities, or maybe it's a social thing for you. But here's what I want to propose to you instead, Fred, is that your opposition to limiting your media consumption habits is also your opposition to your growth. Now, on the topic of why you're drawn to any type of media, and I especially want to put this into anything that you are participatory in, especially like video games. Let's talk about that for a second, okay? Why are you so compelled to do that? But then you're so unmotivated to make art, or you're so unmotivated to start that project. You're so unmotivated to actually step into that role, and maybe you're afraid. Well, did you know that whenever you play video games, that it's literally psychologically hacking you to be addicted to it? And the reason why that happens is that, in case you weren't aware of this, is that video games are literally designed to give you some type of stimulus and reward every 8 seconds. So what that's training you to do is to kind of need a little hit. And just think about this, is that video games are literally giving you like a quick hit, if you want to call it that, of satisfaction every 8 seconds. And then versus, if you compare that with your art labors, right, then you might go like 38 hours and just feel nothing from it, okay? And that's a big problem. And it's no wonder why, when you really sit down and think about it, why you're more pulled to media. And it's not just video games too, that's in all popular media. Like whenever you watch a movie, generally every 8 seconds, there's some type of scene shift. Generally, whenever you're watching and enjoying YouTube content, there's a lot of that similar psychology there too, where every 8 seconds, there should be something new happening on screen in order to keep your retention and attention. And then another big issue is that when you really sit down and think about it, right? Whenever you're consuming media, and again, I'm gonna pull it back to video games here, don't they give you such higher rewards than most of the things that you're doing in your life or that are available to you? Or they're giving you rewards that you wish were possible, but they're actually completely inhuman. And that is wonderful to think about. But again, it's also brain hacking you into desiring that and not what you are actually desiring in life. And so what I find is that these fantastical feats that you're able to accomplish and hit in games or experience in movies and shows, whatever it is, what that's also doing is it's melting you down from the role of being a creator down to being a consumer. You ever realize that? And what this kind of reminds me of is the metaphor of the frog in boiling water. So if you're not familiar with it, it goes something like this, that if you drop a frog into boiling water, it'll just hop out. But if you put a frog into a normal room temperature pot of water and then start to boil it, it will die. Not because it's stupid, but because its body is meant to acclimate to heat. And by the time that it actually realizes it's too late, it doesn't even realize it. So in the same way, that's how your media consumption habits and how literally media is designed psychologically hacking you using those tactics into keeping you engaged. And then that also creates some other issues we'll talk about. But you want to know the irony here is that if you played your life like a video game, you would actually be killing it 10 times, maybe 100 times more than you currently are. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today too. But my friend, I just want to urge you to consider this. Are you being the frog in boiling water or the frog that jumps out of the boiling water? Which one? Now, this is a really hard bar that I really want to set the difference between being a creator versus being a consumer. And what I typically find is that consumers of media, people that knowingly or unknowingly do this, is that they're gonna set limits and they're gonna set restrictions on what they believe that they're able to do. Versus if you are a creator, you are going to define and actually set the limit on what other people think that they're able to do. And you're also gonna open up new creative venues for them too. And to expound on this, what I typically find is that the people that settle down, and I wanna use that word very intently, you settle down into being a consumer. You don't choose to be a consumer, you settle into it, all right? It's not something that anybody wants to do, dreams of doing. Nobody's ever like participating in their like third grade dreams activity. And they're like, what do you wanna do, Johnny? And they're like, no, I just wanna be a slug on the couch and computer all day. But people in that role, they're gonna say, it's too hard, it's impossible. People like me can't do it. People that look like me can't do it. People from this part of the world can't do it. People that make the money that I do can't do that. And that's you setting a bar and a limit, and that's going to become, my friend, a self-fulfilling prophecy for you because you're being and acting more like a consumer than a creator because that's what consumerism wants you to be like. That wants you to feel inferior. Versus if you're able to actually step into that role, then you are going to be the person who's going to defy all the norms and expectations that normal people can't even fathom, not because they're unable to do it, but because they've been taught, conditioned, and actually accepted the fact that they think that they can't. And this kind of ties into like, have you ever been told that you need to be realistic? What the heck is that? Like, what a stupid statement. Being realistic? There are so many things that are realistic now that were so stupid and far-fetched even 20 years ago to consider. Have you ever thought about that? And to put this into another perspective for you too, being realistic is a completely subjective statement. What people are telling you, if they're telling you to be realistic in what you're wanting to do, is they're actually just telling you to be safe and to give up because they've given up on their dreams too. And so one of the things I want to let you know is that creators shape reality and consumers exist within it. So which one do you want to be and how are you defying expectations? Now throughout this video, you might be having some type of reaction such as, well, Sean, easier said than done. And you know what? Yeah, you're absolutely right because it requires nothing of you whatsoever to say anything. But have you ever considered the fact that the reason why you have that attitude is actually because you've been conditioned to think this way? And it all starts in your childhood. So let me just give you this popular example, okay? When you're a child, and this has literally been happening since the 1940s, and this is when psychologists really took over marketing. And what you'll generally tend to notice is that we created this dynamic where generally what you're going to do is you're going to find that when you come home as a child, what would you do? You would sit down and you would engage in some type of media consumption. It used to be TV, then it shifted to video games, and now it's on cell phones, okay? And you would come home and then you would eat dinner and watch TV. And then you think about that, and that would seemingly be like a family activity. And then as a child too, you would have to go to bed. But then what would your parents do? Then they would stay up late and they would watch TV. And then you would, naturally being a kid wanting to be more adult-like, you would say to yourself, when I'm an adult, I'm gonna watch as much TV as I want. I'm gonna stay up as late as I want, watching that, or doing that, or playing on my phone, or I want a phone. Do you ever notice how young kids always want cell phones? And that bar keeps on getting younger and younger and younger. And for me personally, like I pose it, like my kids are already asking for phones at like 5 and 8. And I'm like, no, you will not get it. Enjoy your dang childhood, okay? And no, I will not give that to you. And I don't care about how many of your friends have it. And now coupling that with the fact that when you're a child, marketing is targeting you. And it's actually training you to be a participatory member of a really toxic media addiction. And now let's evolve that. As an adult, you're probably having some sense of FOMO, whether or not you realize it or not. And just to take some shapes and forms into this, this might be the shape of like, oh, you got to watch this new show, or you have to play this new game, or you have to upgrade your system, or you have to play this online game, or all your friends are playing it and you have to too. Have you ever felt that pressure to do that? And I just want to point that out. That's not real. That's just FOMO. That's your fear of missing out. And one of the things that I kind of learned I had to do, and this happened around the time, honestly, when I was in my like mid 20s to early 30s, is I would have to sit there and be like, why do I really feel that way? And like, why should I do that? Why do I need to do that? Why should I listen to that? And so the next time that you're like, man, I got to do that, why don't you do this as a strategy? Why don't you stop and just say, why do I really feel that way? Or the next time you feel like you have to continue that gaming session or that ultra long binge marathon, why do I want to do this? Why is that something that I really need to do right now? Why is this going to help me feel better or worse? And by the way, that's another thing that we're going to talk about soon, because I need to dismiss that and let you know the reality of it. But why are you not stopping? Why are you not doing the things that you want? What else could you be doing that this is currently stopping you from? Have you ever considered that? Another stark contrast that you will always find between creators of media and consumers has to do with ideas. And tell me, are you somebody right now who's like, I don't have great ideas, or I wish I had better ideas, or like, oh man, I've got an idea, but it's just not good enough? You ever felt this way? Because we all do. And one of the big tragic misunderstandings that I want to dispel for you right now is that your ideas actually don't matter. That's right, I said it. I'm not saying that like your personal idea doesn't matter. I'm just saying none of your ideas matter, because no ideas matter whatsoever. We've placed such a high value on coming up with the great idea and the thought labor before anything happens. But that's the difference between being a creator and consumer, is that the consumer of media is going to put a lot of heavy value on the thought. But just to be honest with you, nobody cares about your idea, and it's not that great anyways. And you're probably aware of the fact that there's no new ideas, there's no new novel things. But instead, what we have are just new innovations. And just to put this into another perspective for you, okay? If you are like, no, but ideas do matter, they matter so much, okay? Let me just propose this to you. You will find no shortage of people with great business ideas that will never develop it. You will find no shortage of people that are absolutely broke and have terrible money habits, but they're gonna give you a lot of money tips. And I've always said, if you wanna get really great health tips, you'll find no shortage of really, really unhealthy people who are gonna tell you everything that they think that they should do, but they're not really a good representative of it. So why are you asking the people that are broke how to get wealthy? Why are you asking the people who aren't artists how to be an artist? Why are you asking somebody who has no idea how to do the thing you wanna do to do the thing you wanna do? And so non-creators always value ideas like they matter when they don't. And so for you as a creator, you don't value the idea. And you shouldn't. You should value your labor towards the idea. You should value the effort that you're putting into it. And this just kind of reminds me, like in freelancing, one of the things that I always tell people is that your artwork actually isn't what people buy. It's your effort, it's your labor, it's the experience that people get from you that really matters. And your artwork just happens to be a part of that process. It is not the end goal. And so if you're somebody here that definitely is going to step into the role of being creator, let me just ask you, are you overvaluing the thought labor or the actual labor? Because one of them is going to bring you to where you want to go, and one of them will keep you from going there. Which one? Now, as somebody that wants to be creative, as somebody that is an artist, as somebody that wants to get better at this, right? There are some things that are actually going to give you better, more creative ideas in order to act upon. And that's what I really want to focus on, because just real talk, you playing games is not going to make you better. You watching shows, not going to make you better. You playing on your phone, not going to make it better. You watching that movie, not going to make you better, friend. That will give you a quick burst, but it's not going to sustain you, okay? So if you're right now like, well, what actually makes me a better creative? What will actually fuel my creativity rather than extinguish it? Here are some great ideas. First and foremost is exercise. In you having a healthy body and you having a healthier lifestyle, that is definitely going to make more room for creativity, because it's actually going to sustain your efforts. Because one of the things I've always noticed is that there's a lot of glorification between living a very unhealthy lifestyle. And if you're somebody that actually wants more energy, wants to stop falling asleep every single time that you say that you're going to create art, that's probably your number one thing to really look at, is what is your physical activity level like? And what's your exercise routine like? Another one I would really want to encourage you to consider is reading. I'm not talking on the field of like comics and manga. I mean like actual books, because some of the greatest creative minds didn't just paint and draw. They wrote written word and they constructed stories and narratives that would help expose you to new perspectives and new stories and new ways of thinking about it and elevate and mature your thought processes. And that has to come by you slowing down your brain and reading words across a page. And just this real tragic statistic that I want to expose you right now is that the average American household did not even buy one book this year. And that's really sad, isn't it, when you think about it? Because this is really how you're going to expand your imagination. And I'm going to give you some other hard strategies for how to do that in a minute. But just to give you a really great example of this, I actually come to a lot of my ideas for my YouTube channel from my reading. And just to put this into a practice, I read about 35 books last year, especially because I'm in my doctorate program, but I found that to be a wonderful thing too. Another thing that you can do is that your actual in-person activities. So like, do you like to play games with other people? Do you like to go places with them? And I'm not talking about going to the club or going to the bar. I'm talking about like actual things that you engage in with other people, because you being forced into those social situations is what actually is going to help you be exposed to and consider different social dynamics and actually think about different thoughts and feelings that arise in that are actually really meaningful for you. And then finally, this is a hard one for so many of you, and I know you're gonna feel like real weird about this one, but actually being bored, because when you really think about it, your best ideas don't come when you're like in the trenches and you're doing the things. No, they come from when you have time for pause and rest on that. And boredom has to be something that I'm going to encourage you to do so that you actually get those great ideas and you actually step into that role. Because you just being a complete glutton for either media consumption or for you who's just overworking yourself because you think that you always have to be busy and you're actually harming yourself by doing that, you need to take time to just be bored. So one of the things I want to challenge you on is every day to create 30 minutes to an hour where you're doing nothing. You're not looking at a phone, you're not looking at any type of screen, you're not talking to anybody, you are just in complete silence. And those are some of the best ways that you can sustain what you're doing and step into that role of being a creator versus you settling down into the role of being a rapid consumer of media that's actually detrimental to you. Now, as an artist, you are definitely prideful of your creative vision. You're somebody that wants to grow it and you want to mature it. And like I said, you definitely have your inspirations, don't you, friend? But one of the things that I find as a really poor practice, and it's a really bad misunderstanding, it's a very popular misunderstanding too, is actually what constructs your imagination. Because one of the things that I think artists are terribly ill-advised on is that, and it's not just me, I've heard this from a lot of artists too that are way more seasoned in their life, is that you are going to be told that you need to like have a sketchbook where you just have your ideas and you should just draw from your mind, not look at anything, not look at any references. But I want to just let you know that's not actually a good, sustainable, nor is it a motivating way for you to see yourself growing your imagination. And I want to give you a better version of this in a minute, but for right now, let's just take a look at like, what is an imagination? And let me just ask you this. When you take a look at the root word of imagination, what is it? It's image, right? And a base understanding that so few artists tragically are not exposed to is the fact that you cannot imagine something that you have not been exposed to the image of. In other words, you can't draw something well, you can't draw something better, nor will you ever draw anything better if you're not actually working with any type of image-based source for it. And this is typically the folly of a lot of young artists. It's typically a folly of a lot of old artists too that have been beaten into them that they can't use references or sources, okay? But that's total trash advice, and you will never find anybody operating at a really high level who actually works like that, my friend. And that's so hard for you because your brain cannot capture and conjure what it's never been exposed to. So a better way for you to do it, my friend, is that if you're somebody that suffers from what you perceive to be imagination, you're somehow looking for it in every game that you play, in every show that you watch, whatever, I just want to offer you this advice. You need to definitely invest into way more references. And I want to just put this to a number because I'm going to give it to you from my personal practice and what I generally tend to advise people on is that if you're, let's just say you want to create a character, okay? Any character, just take it for what it is. If you're not working with 15 to 20 references, that's why you're dissatisfied with it, okay? That's why you're disappointed in it. If you're creating like an entire scene, like I literally have different folders of 15 to 20 references of like, let's say I'm going to create a 5-character scene, 15 to 20 references for every single character plus the background on there. So if you're somebody who is not pleased with where you're going, I guarantee you that this is the start of where you actually suffer and why your artwork isn't coming out at the level that you want to, nor are you growing to the level that you want to. Have you ever considered that? Now, moving forward from there, I do want to just go ahead and let you know how do you actually build imagination. And I also want to expose you to one of the worst practices that you're probably doing, because a lot of us as artists, we take a look at everybody online, we take a look at video games and stuff, and we're going to try and be influenced by them, right? And we're going to allow ourselves to be like, wow, I want to create my art like that person or that genre or that game. And oh my God, that was the best ever. I want to go ahead and I want to be just like that. And I bet you are like that too, because I am as well. And I used to be a lot like this until I discovered this is the flaw in that. When you're idolizing a particular experience, like let's just say that you love The Last of Us and now you want to create post-apocalyptic art, you're not actually understanding the form language there. You're not understanding why that's great. And that tends to create a lot of style and confusion. And so rather than you just saying, well, I want to create just like XYZ, stop doing that. Instead, you need to see the artist through the artwork. And here's what I mean by that, is that when you see somebody's artwork and then you try and create it, you're generally not going to do it. And here's why, is because you don't understand them. You don't understand what the artist likes, what they're all about, what their passions are, what their interests are, what their backgrounds are. So just like, for example, like if you ever take a look at like James Gurney, who made Dinotopia in the books like Imaginative Realism and Color and Light, which I think most artists do read, and if not, you should definitely read them. He created this series called Dinotopia. And the reason why he was so good at that is actually because he has a degree in anthropology. So he like literally from the bones and muscle structures of these dinosaurs, he understands how to do that. So that's what I need you to actually think about and revolve your practices around. Don't just be like, oh, I want to create a game like Mass Effect, so I'm going to create Mass Effect style stuff. Or I love Star Wars, I want to create Star Wars style stuff. No. You got to take a look at the influences that influence that artist. So you actually don't want to take a look at that artist's artwork right now. You want to take a look at what was happening probably like 30 to 50 years ago that had that developed from it. And if you do that, then you're actually going to be able to, not to say this is how you like copy a style, but that's how you're actually going to be able to evolve your own artwork. And especially when you take that and you sprinkle in your own influences. And this is something that tragically nobody ever tells you, am I right? Now this one's gonna hit hard and home for you. And it's something that I wanna tell you about because I want you to get better with it and I actually want you to live healthy in this life, okay? So here's a big difference that you're gonna find between a creator and consumer. And it has to do with when things get hard for you. So are you somebody that whenever life gets a little tough for you, it pushes back? Do you run to media? Do you pick up the controller? Do you pick up your phone? Do you watch TikTok? Do you go on your binge fest? Do you start watching your shows? Do you break away? Or, I mean, when you think about it like this too, have you ever noticed that a lot of times if somebody has like a child that's flipping out in the store, they like give them a phone, they give them an iPad? What a lot of us do is that when we encounter hardships, we actually don't learn how to cope with the problem. We learn to mediate the problem. And that is incredibly toxic to you, not only as a creative, but as a human being here. So non-creatives tend to look at media consumption, playing games, playing on the phone, watching shows, watching TV, whatever it is, fill in the blank, as a way to positively cope with their emotions. And just to put this in another perspective, I've literally had so many people tell me, like when they get upset, the first thing that they do is that they run to playing this game and it makes them feel happy. Are you somebody like that too? Because I just want to blow that out of the water. It doesn't make you feel happy, friend. It's just hacking you into making you feel a little bit of dopamine, and then that makes you calm down. But that's incredibly unhealthy because it's not teaching you positive coping skills as a human being. It's actually teaching you and ingraining bad media addictions. That's teaching you mediation, and that's never going to help you. Also, let's put this into another perspective. Are you somebody who every single time that you feel depressed or you feel anxious, you pick up and you search out that media source because you're going to say to yourself, it makes me feel better? If it makes you feel better to do that, you don't feel better. You feel, just to represent this to you, numb. It teaches you to numb away your problems. And when you're numbing away your problems, you are not ever going to step into the role of being a creator because you're going to be afraid to do that because you're going to feel that you need your little quick drug hit of media consumption in order to do it. And that's setting you up for failure. That's also, by the way, making you a weaker human being. And that's not what I want from you, friend, okay? And that's why it's so important for you to monitor your habits and to build better ones. You see how that works? And so one of the worst things that you can ever do, my friend, is to make the excuse that your media habits are somehow helping you. Because if you want to be a creator, you also have to create healthy coping strategies and healthy coping mechanisms for you handling the troubles and traumas of your life. But nobody ever tells you that, do they? Nah, just have a cell phone instead. Now imagine this. What if you actually played your life like a video game? What if you actually stepped into the role that you are meant to, that you actually wanted to be, because of the fact that you actually did all the stuff that you do in your games? What if you actually lived the life of the character in your shows? And have you ever thought about how powerful that would be and what that would shape your reality to be like, and how that would allow you to step into the role you want, the creator you want to be? And to help kind of give you the best sort of framework for this one, I made this entire video right here for you, so go ahead and check it out, and if this helped you, share it with somebody that you know. Thanks so much, and see you next time.